This is the Wireless Institute of Australia with the weekly news service. This broadcast is in text, audio and video and is accessed on wia.org.au.
And I'm Graham, VK4BB, with the December 4 edition of WIA National News, the best news you'll get all week. Joining us this week, WIA Director Peter, VK4EA. Coming up, Centenary Celebration. The centenary of organised amateur radio in Tasmania will be celebrated in June next year. Justin, VK7 Tango Whiskey, has put out a call for anyone who would like to be involved in a group to plan, organise and deliver the centenary activities. Now, if you're interested, email vk7tw@wia.org.au. And from VK6, a bit short of a century, but as far as broadcasting this news service, it's hats off to Phil, VK6GX, broadcasting news since 1984. And back then, Phil's call sign, Victor Kilo 6, Abel Baker Lima.
I'm Phil, VK6 Golf X-Ray in Kajikana.
Well done, that man.
Hello again from Peter, VK4EA, coming to you again from the Engine in Turrbal and Yagara country. This week's been busy for the WA board, so let's get into it. YOTA, Youngsters on the Air, an initiative to get more young people on the air. This year the WIA have applied for VK2 to YOTA, a call sign available to any organisation running a YOTA event. The IARU, International Amateur Radio Union, are encouraging individuals and organisations to participate in the December YOTA 2022 event. More information can be found by searching for YOTA. There's a link in the text edition. More YOTA 2022 announcements are forthcoming. Stay tuned. Class licence in high power. The ACMA consultation period closed Friday, the 2nd of December. The WIA Spectrum Strategy Committee have put in a massive, huge, ginormous effort in preparing the WIA response. Thank you to all those that submitted a response to the survey. The responses helped greatly to formulate the submission. Last Monday, the board received a briefing from Grant, VK5GR, and Peter, VK3MV, going through the submission in detail. The board overwhelmingly endorsed the submission. It's an impressive effort indeed. We'll circulate a link to the submission soon. It's most likely been advertised by the time this piece has been broadcast. All we can do now is be responsive to any queries from the ACMA and be patient while the submission has been digested. Last week I spoke about the director vacancies coming up and reiterating nominations for board positions close 12th of December. And also, the 2023 director elections will be electronic. For those listening who do not wish to or are unable to cast their vote electronically, there's an option to receive a paper ballot. The latest AR magazine address label doubles as a request for a paper ballot. And that's it for me this year. I'm looking forward to a break over the Christmas New Year period, and I hope to be active on the 2 metre Tropo and 6 metre sporadic E-season. This has been Peter, VK4EA, on behalf of the WA board.
This is the home service of the Wireless Institute of Australia through VK1WIA. Now, international news with Jason, VK2LAW.
Hello. In news from Region 1, beware of counterfeit ICOM products. Colin Butler, writing in icqpodcast.com, says ICOM has reported seeing counterfeit copies of ICOM radios available online, with some also arriving in the UK to unsuspecting buyers. These copies look like genuine ICOM radios, but when examined more closely are not, and are significantly inferior in both quality and performance. Several buyers have contacted ICOM believing they've purchased and thought were receiving a genuine ICOM. On arrival, the radios had an incorrect UK channel set, some channels missing, and in some cases buttons not functioning as expected. Most, if not all of these counterfeit products are found online and compared to genuine are priced incredibly low. However, what might seem like a bargain or a great purchase will become a great disappointment and could affect how you use your radio and also your and others' safety. If you're unsure, ask the seller for a serial number in advance of purchasing, call the ICOM customer service team, who can confirm the origin of the radio as genuine or not. Big promise from ultra-tiny battery. Battery technology continues to change, and the latest evolution, announced recently, is a super small rechargeable micro battery with a high tolerance for variations in temperature and a lifespan of between 1 and 2 decades. Kent Peterson, Kilo Charlie 0 Delta Golf Yankee from Amateur Radio Newsline, tells us about this new development and what scientists are saying about it.
A company in France believes it has come up with the latest solution to provide battery power for micro-power devices. The company Iton has developed an ultra-small rechargeable lithium battery. At first glance, the surface-mount solid-state battery might easily be mistaken for an SMD chip, as its housing is only slightly larger than the battery's own dimensions of 3.2 by 2.5 millimeter. They are, of course, not chips. These batteries have a capacity of between 0.1 and 0.5 milliamp hour. They were found capable of tolerating temperatures between minus 40 degrees Celsius or minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit all the way to 85 degrees Celsius or 185 degrees Fahrenheit. Their ability to deliver peak currents make them especially useful for powering RF transmissions such as Bluetooth, Sigfox, and LTE to deliver packets of data via sensors. The website CNX software also sees the batteries as being useful for sensor data loggers, beacons, and backup power supplies for microcontrollers. The solid-state technology is considered another plus, contributing toward a usable lifespan of between 10 and 20 years. The company has said the batteries are also fast charging. The website Hackaday poses the following challenge, quote, "We'd be particularly interested to learn about their temperature sensitivity when it comes to soldering, as we've taken to heart the warnings about soldering to more traditional lithium cells," end quote. The website noted there are apparently some evaluation kits available directly from the company in France. This is Kent Peterson, KC0 DGY.
Thanks, Kent. In-car radio trends revealed at World DAB Summit 2022. James Careless writing in RadioWorld.com, where he's covered this radio summit. How is radio actually doing in the car today, given growing competition from streaming services? What motivates people to choose radio over streaming while driving, and vice versa? And what role will voice control play in managing in-car entertainment systems? These points and others were covered by the Director of In-Vehicle Research at Strategy Analytics during her presentation talk at the World DAB Summit 2022. It was organised by World DAB, the DAB Global Industry Forum, on November 17 at London's King Place and online. She touched on the growing availability of DAB receivers in cars and the need for automobile manufacturers to provide drivers with easy-to-read, easy-to-navigate touch panels, and the emergence of Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, and the Android Automotive Operating System in this environment. The next trend I will mention is the ubiquity of voice interactions, she continued. If well implemented, they could be less distracting to drivers than manual visual interactions. And the last trend, of course, to be prepared for is autonomous vehicles. All this being said, there is still a clear and very specific need for broadcast radio in the car, she concluded. While it is true that the time spent listening to streaming services has increased, these services are complementary to radio. This is why, in her view, radio is still royalty on vehicle dashboards. In news from Region 2, Nebraska's First Lady, Susan Shaw, recently presented the Disaster Volunteer Award to Dodge County Amateur Radio Emergency Services at a luncheon in Omaha. 11 Nebraskans groups were honoured. The Serve Nebraska Step Forward Awards recognise exemplary volunteers across the US state for their time and service aimed at making their communities better. The awards are the most prestigious awards given for volunteerism in the state of Nebraska. To our own backyard in Region 3, the SmartSat Cooperative Research Centre has announced an agreement to further develop new search and rescue beacon technologies in partnership with NASA. It's the latest in a long history of cooperation in the field of SAR between Australia and the United States. Similar to distress beacons on Earth, the system will provide miniature low-powered radio beacons mounted on spacesuits and lunar rover vehicles, and will support SOS and two-way messaging over a lunar orbiting satellite constellation. It will also allow the beacon location to be accurately determined in the absence of GPS. This information will be provided securely and quickly to both the Mission Control Centre on Earth and the response team on the Moon, who are able to take immediate action. In an interview with criticalcoms.com.au, SmartSat CEO Andy Coronius said this agreement signals Australia's space sector is developing globally important technologies. NASA has been instrumental in the development journey for this essential safety technology. And while it is early stages, we now have the further potential of this Australian-developed tech playing an important role in lunar and Martian exploration missions under the Artemis program. For VK1 WIA National News, in Sydney, I'm Jason, VK2LAW.
This is the home service of the Wireless Institute of Australia through VK1 WIA. Now operational news with Felix, VK4 FUQ.
Hello there. 2021 WIA Contest Champion results. The WIA Contest Champion is awarded annually for the best combined effort in WIA-sponsored contests. It recognises those who have participated in multiple WIA contests and submitted logs throughout the year. There were a total of 294 contestants during 2021. The winner of the Peter Brown VK4 PJ Trophy for 2021 is Laurie Mew, VK5LJ, with a score of 520 points. Laurie acquired WIA Contest Champion points in 7 of the 9 eligible contests. Congratulations to Laurie. He has now won the WIA Contest Champion Trophy 4 years in a row. The RSGB is hosting the Transatlantic Centenary Test 2022 on the HF band this month. Unlike those of the 1920s, which consisted of one-way communication, this event will encourage worldwide two-way communication with the UK and Crown dependency stations. There will be a series of awards available for making QSOs with those who are activating historic RSGB call signs. Now Contest-wise 2022. 160-metre CW contest, ARL sponsored. Objective is for amateurs worldwide to exchange information with W/VE amateurs on 160 metres CW. December 2 to 4, yes, this weekend. 10-metre contest, ARL sponsored. For amateurs worldwide to exchange QSO information with as many stations as possible on the 10-metre band. Second full weekend of December, starts 0000 hours UTC Saturday, runs through 23:59 hours UTC Sunday, December 10-11. Logs are due within 7 days after the event is over. DX window. Active from Zanzibar is the call sign 9H3FM until December 13. Most on 20, 15 and 10 metres using SSB and FT8. QSL to home call HB9 DSP. Be listening for Take JS6RRR operating from Ayakojima, IOTA number AS079 until December 17. Take will be on 86 metres using modes SSB, CW, FM, RITI and JT65. JS6RRR QSL information is on QRZ.com. Brazil. Special event station PV22 Cup is until December 18 for the 22nd FIFA World Cup in Qatar. Poland. Special event call signs 3Z95PRK, HF95PRK, SN95PRK, SO95PRK, SP95PRK, and SQ95PRK. RQRV till December 11, celebrating the 95th anniversary of Poland's largest regional radio broadcaster, Polski Radio Katowice. QSL these various 95 PRK stations by the Bureau. And as the rain falls here in Ingham, for VK1 WIA National News, I'm Felix, VK4FUQ.
Now, special interest group news with Bruce, VK3FFF.
And a very good day to you. Worldwide special interest group news and adventure groups living in or planning to visit VK7? In Launceston, a Summits on the Air Worldwide Flora and Fauna Parks group meets twice weekly, Mondays and Fridays, 10:30 a.m. until noon at the Glebe Gardens Cafe, Henry Street. Al, VK7AN, is the man to see if you want further information. Contact details are in the text edition of the news this week. SOTA, and the one to listen out for is Charlie November 22 Juliet Indigo Mike from Morocco. Special station CN22JIM will be active on the 5th through to the 18th of December from Imlil in the high Atlas mountain range of Morocco. The call sign suffix stands for Journée Internationale de la Montagne, or International Mountain Day, which will be celebrated on the 10th of December. Worldwide Special Interest Groups, CW. Tango Mike 35 Foxtrot Indigo Sierra Tango. It's the special call sign to celebrate the 35th anniversary of the Fists CW Club, to be held from the 5th to the 11th of December. The club was founded in 1987 by the late G3ZQS, after recognising a need for a club in which veteran operators would help newcomers and less experienced operators learn and improve CW proficiency. Worldwide Special Interest Groups, Final Frontier. Another year has passed, and FunCube 1 has continued to operate from its orbit around 600 kilometres above the Earth. To start with some statistics, the spacecraft creates and downlinks data in frames that run for 2-minute periods. It has now transmitted more than 16 million of these frames, or sequence numbers. Another big statistic is more than 10 million data packets have been received by stations that have forwarded them to FunCube Data Warehouse. Thanks to all contributors around the world, having this network of ground stations has enabled the FunCube team to easily monitor the status of the spacecraft the past 9 years. NASA and the government of Japan have announced further contributions by Japan to Gateway, a key component of the agency's Artemis missions for long-term lunar exploration. In addition to the Gateway arrangement, announced was Japan's commitment to participate in the International Space Station program through to 2030, the first international partner to join the United States in formally committing to space station operations through to 2030. NASA welcomed Japan's announcement of its continuation of space station operations. Today's last story in the Final Frontier comes from a great weekly publication from NASA called Space Station Science Highlights. Crew members aboard the International Space Station conducted scientific investigations during the week of November 21st that included radio contact between astronauts and science students on the ground, and tracking how the human body adapts to microgravity. During the week, crew members spoke with students studying and monitoring natural hazards at 12 schools in 9 Caribbean and Central American countries, hosted by St. Joseph's Convent Secondary School in St. Lucia. Adopting to space. For this investigation, crew members complete cognition tests and sleep questionnaires, and collected blood, saliva and urine samples for various analyses, including immune function and microbiome health. Other measures included artery ultrasounds and sensory motor tests. This data, collected over the life of the space station, enable researchers to examine how crew members adapt to living and working in space, and to monitor countermeasure effectiveness in support of future long-duration missions. Worldwide Special Interest Groups, IOTA, Madagascar. 5 operators are QRV as 5R8 Whiskey Papa, 5R8 Whiskey Golf, 5R8 Mike Mike, 5R8 Charlie Golf and 5R8 Papa Alpha, respectively, from Nosy Be Island IOTA AF057 until today, December the 3rd. Activity is on 160 to 6 metres using CW, SSB, RTTY and FT8. QSL these IOTA stations via Delta Lima 2 Alpha Whiskey Golf. Worldwide special interest groups, radio amateur old-timers. Now to our friends in the West, a message from Clive, VK6CSW.
VK6 members and friends are reminded that the Christmas lunch will be at the Woodbridge Hotel in Guildford on Tuesday, December the 13th. The January lunchtime meeting will be on Tuesday, January the 10th at the same venue. Hello everyone, this is Clive, VK6CSW, reminding you that tomorrow is the first Monday of the month, time for the Radio Amateurs Older Timers Club of Australia's December Bulletin to go to air. This month, as well as all the latest club news, we have news of the latest committee meeting, an item on the ugly duckling Liberty ships of World War II, the story of a man who fell 18,000 feet and lived to tell the tale. Everyone, RAOTC members and non-members alike, is most welcome to listen to the programme and join in the callbacks afterwards. Full details of all transmissions, times and modes can be found on the RAOTC website at www.raotc.org.au or just Google RAOTC broadcasts. If none of the transmission times suit you, you can download the audio file at any time from today from the club website. On behalf of the committee, I wish everyone a happy and safe Christmas. As per usual, there will be no January bulletin. The first RAOTC bulletin for 2023 will be on Monday, February the 6th. And once again, tune in tomorrow for the December bulletin. Enjoy the programme and please join the callbacks afterwards. 7-3 from Clive, VK6CSW.
Graham just popping in a moment because we've got so much news today. To fit it all in, we're going to have to take an official station break. And this is who we are.
From Australia, this is the Wireless Institute of Australia with the weekly news service.
From old-timers to young-timers, and the IARU Region 1 Youth Working Group has held its yearly meeting. Within this virtual gathering, various things, such as a roadmap, new structure, etc., were introduced and discussed. And Alec, VK2APC, is here with more.
Thank you, Bruce. Due to its fast growth over the past few years, the Youth Working Group gained lots of responsibilities and tasks. Thus, it was decided to appoint a second vice chair position to split those responsibilities and tasks among the board members. Ottawa Tumoy, Oscar Hotel 3, Oscar Tango, now serves as a second vice chair next to Marcus Gruber, Delta Lima 8, Golf Mike within the working group. Ottawa has been a member since 2019 and is currently actively contributing to the well-known Train the Trainer program as its coordinator. He will remain within his Train the Trainer coordinator position, as well as assisting with the strategic plans and tasks and decision-making among the board. All present Youth Working Group members voted in favour, none against, and no abstains. Yoda thanks OH3OT for his contribution and are looking forward to the future of Yoda in Region 1. For VK1 WIA National News, I'm Alec, VK2APC in Sydney. Now back over to you, Bruce.
Worldwide Special Interest Groups, Rescue Radio, Skywarn Recognition Day, set for December the 3rd, 2022. The annual Skywarn on-the-air activity will take place from 0000 to 2400 UTC. Skywarn Recognition Day was developed in 1999 by the US National Weather Service and ARRL to honour the contributions that Skywarn volunteers make to the NWS mission, that is, the protection of life and property during threatening weather. During the Skywarn special event, hams will operate from several NWS offices as well as from their mobile, home and club stations. a radio, a rescue, and a QSL card. Sometimes a QSL card can confirm so much more than just a successful contact. Just ask one ham in Wyoming who recently got such a card with a special message. Here's Ralph Scilacci, KK6ITB, with that story.
Nicholas Cashoily, N0ASL, recently sent a QSL card to Jim Shirey, N7FC. The men had a QSO on Halloween night on the same frequency where members of the Buffalo Amateur Radio Club customarily check in and keep up to date on matters related to the club. The voice coming from Jim's HT, however, wasn't from a fellow club member. It was that of a motorist in distress. That motorist was Nicholas. According to a report on the Buffalo Bulletin website, Nicholas told Jim that he needed help. He'd been driving through a canyon in Johnson County in north-central Wyoming when his car slid off the road. His car was disabled, and there was no cell service available in the area. Using his radio, Jim gathered what information he could get from Nicholas and then called 911. The story in the Buffalo Bulletin said that the fire and sheriff's departments were sent to assist at the scene. Jim, however, didn't learn of the happy ending until he received that QSL card from Nicholas this month. Only after its arrival from Nicholas, Nebraska QTH did Jim discover some of the details of what turned out to be a successful rescue. Nicholas was safe and had not been injured. The day it arrived, his QSL card did double duty as a thank you card. This is Ralph Scilacci, KK6ITB.
Special Interest Groups, VLF. Lowdown. Here's a good news story from VK6HP, Peter Hall, about our lowest spectrum allocation, the 2200 metre band, or the 136 kilohertz band. Monday night, November 21st, VK6MJM set a new Oceania to North America distance record for one-way digital modes. VK6MJM's transmissions, running at about 0.8 watts EIRP, were received by Paul KM5SW in Hemoth Springs, New Mexico, in the United States. The propagation distance was 16,164 kilometres. Not bad for about 1 watt on this notoriously challenging band. Transmissions used the relatively new WSJT-X FST4W 300 mode, which is a 5-minute key-down mode. Paul received the VK6MJM signals at a signal-to-noise ratio of -36 or -37 dB relative to the standard 2.5 kHz WSJT-X reference bandwidth. VK6MJM is operated by the Western Australian Low Frequency Experimenters Group, led by Professor Peter, VK6HP, and affiliated with the WIA. The station is based around a decommissioned aeronautical NDB facility at Manjimup, 300 kilometres south of Perth. The Morse ident was Mike Juliet Mike, and the new call sign is a nod to history. Peter was able to write a proposal to local and state authorities, persuading them of the value of reusing the site, particularly the 22.5 metre high live mast antenna for amateur radio, scientific research and educational activities. The great majority of the current VK6MJM equipment is homebrew. And while it's early days, several Western Australian Low Frequency Experimenters Group, or WLFEG members, have made important contributions to refurbishing the site, with the ultimate aim of having the station remotely controlled. More details are available on the VK6MJM QRZ webpage, and details of the record-breaking transmission gear can be found in the text of this week's WIA National News. I'm Bruce, VK3FFF in sunny Bendigo.
Wrapping up today's news, the 2022 social scene. Next weekend in VK4, it's Redcliffe and District's Radio Club's car boot sale. Happens Saturday the 10th of December, McFarlane Park, Klinger Road, Kippering. Now till next we meet, I'm Graham, VK4BB. walk softly.
From Australia, this has been the Wireless Institute of Australia with the weekly news service. This broadcast is in text, audio and video and is accessed on wia.org.au.
Courtesy of Bevan, VK5BD's ATV and YouTube channel, this has been WIA National News. We're back now, live and local, and your voice, your callbacks. And don't forget, tick like.
This is VKE30TN, the official call sign of the Radio Amateurs Old Timers Club of Australia, with the regular transmission of news and information for members and friends of the club for December 2022. This broadcast is presented via several transmissions, most occurring on the first Monday of each month except January. Details of the times and frequencies of the relays of these broadcasts by various stations are available on the club's website at www.raotc.org.au. The broadcasts can also be streamed or downloaded as an MP3 audio file from the RAOTC website for up to 6 months from the month of the broadcast. If you do listen to this broadcast via computer streaming or download, could you please take a few moments to send a brief message or comment to the RAOTC email address so that we can get your feedback and also know how many are using this service. The RAOTC email address is raotc@raotc.org.au. Callbacks will follow most of the broadcast transmission so that members and other listeners can give reports and make comments or suggestions. If you listen to this broadcast, please take a few minutes to participate in either a check-in or a callback after the news is finished. The order of each callback will be announced by the operator. With so much changing so rapidly in this day and age, members should regularly check the RAOTC website, www.raotc.org.au, which is usually updated as soon as new details come to hand. The website covers all facets of RAOTC activities, which also includes, as soon as they come to hand, the very latest information on RAOTC activities, including both the Melbourne and Perth luncheons. You're listening to VK30TN and associated relay stations for the Radio Amateurs Old Timers Club of Australia, with the December 2022 broadcast of news and information for members and friends of the club. I'm Bill Roper, VK3BR, and this December 2022 broadcast has been compiled and is being presented by me. In addition to club news, including the November RAOTC committee meeting, today's broadcast will include a couple of historical items, including one presented by Clive Wallace, VK6CSW. RAOTC monthly news and information broadcasts. Regular listeners will recall my recent appeals for at least a couple of club members to step forward to fill the vacancies for monthly broadcast compilers and presenters. We're still looking for suitable volunteers. Due to excellent electronic computer communication these days, we are no longer dependent upon local Melburnians to assist. A volunteer located anywhere in VK with reliable internet connection will be able to help. These monthly RAOTC news broadcasts have been in existence for many decades. It would be a pity if they fell by the wayside next year, because not one of the nearly 500 members of the club is prepared to put something back into the club once every couple of months or so. Can you help? Your club needs you. Think about it, and if you would like to give it a go and help with compiling and presenting the content of these monthly broadcasts, please contact the RAOTC Administrative Secretary, Jim Gordon, VK3ZKK, or Club President, David Rosenfield, VK3 Alpha Delta Mike. Jim's and David's contact details are available from the RAOTC website and also from page 2 of any recent issue of OTN Journal. These monthly RAOTC news and information broadcasts have been in operation for several decades, virtually from the formation of the RAOTC back in the 1970s. It would be a shame if we had to discontinue these monthly broadcasts because of a lack of volunteers. Club News. New RAOTC member. I'm pleased to announce the following new club member. Kevin Bicknell, VK6AB, who became new full member number 1846 on the 3rd of November 2022. Welcome to the club, Kevin. I trust you enjoy a long and enjoyable membership of the club. Please feel free to join in any of the callbacks after this broadcast. Silent keys. It's not often that we don't have any advice in these broadcasts of at least one or more of our fellow club members who have become silent keys during the past month. However, this month I am very pleased to advise that I've not received any notification of the passing of any of our club members since the last monthly broadcast. RAOTC Management Committee meeting. The November quarterly meeting of the RAOTC Committee took place via the medium of Zoom on Thursday the 24th of November, and many items of business were attended to. Reports on the finances, membership, OTN Journal, Melbourne luncheons, monthly news broadcast and the RAOTC website were tabled by the responsible committee members and discussed. Incidentally, it is pleasing to note that the RAOTC continues to be in a healthy financial state. 8 matters of general business were discussed and debated. The items which generated the most discussion were the inability, despite stringent efforts, to find a new monthly broadcast coordinator and also a new editor for OTN Journal. Surely, in our nearly 500 members, there are people who have the interest and ability to consider taking on these roles. Actually, the committee is quite concerned about the future of the RAOTC if these 2 very important vacancies are not filled soon. Can you help? Another important order of business was a selection of the recipient of the Stuart Day Award 2022 for the best original contribution to be published in OTN Journal during 2022. After discussion, it was unanimously decided that the winner was Rodney Champness, VK3UG, for his outstanding 3-part series on Radio Australia Shepparton. Sadly, this award is being presented posthumously, as Rodney became a silent key on the 22nd of October 2022. This is VK3OTN and associated relay stations for the Radio Amateurs Old-Timers Club of Australia with the December 2022 broadcast of news and information for members and friends of the club. And now for some history. The late Col Harvey, VK1AU, joined the RAOTC in January 1979 as member number 303 and sadly became a silent key in August 2010. Cole was ex-RAAF, an amateur historian, and he published a number of articles in both the WIA's Amateur Radio magazine and the RAOTC's OTN Journal. This first historical item in today's broadcast was written by Cole, and it was published in the September 1999 edition of OTN Journal. It is entitled The Ugly Duckling Liberty Ship. Old-timers will recall the World War II Liberty ships, many of which served as merchant ships long after World War II ended. Here is what Cole wrote. There is a public conception that the famous Liberty ship fleet in World War II was conceived as well as built in America. This is not so. The inspiration and the requirement came from Britain. The design concept was for a ship of about 10,000 tons, capable of an average speed of 10 knots on 17 tons of coal a day. A successful British vessel named the Dorrington Court, built in 1939, led to another British vessel called Empire Liberty. She became the prototype for 60 ships a year, ordered from the USA in 1941. To be known as the Ocean class, these in turn led to the Liberty ships. Ocean class British emergency cargo vessels were powered by a simple 2100 bhp triple expansion steam engine. All 10 winches, windlass and warping capstan were also steam driven. 2,400 tons of coal could be carried. Because of the need for urgent delivery of these 60 ships, it was decided to adhere to a familiar type of construction and machinery. In January 1941, 60 British-designed 2100 bhp engines were ordered from the US. In the long run, 2,710 identical engines were built. These engines were triple expansion steam engines. There were 3 single-ended multi-tubular coal-fired boilers, each having 3 furnaces and a common stokehold. Boiler pressure was 220 psi. Superheating gave a final temperature of about 550 degrees Fahrenheit. Like the deck machinery, all engine room auxiliaries were steam-driven. American experience gained in quickly building these 60 Ocean-class ships meant that the superseding Liberty ship program was able to be undertaken with facility and speed by standardization of parts, allowing 65 slipways, using multiple manufacturers to assemble the prefabricated sections. At the outbreak of World War II, 92% of 1,422 ocean-going American cargo ships were slow and more than 20 years old. 225 were in fact in layup from World War I. Because shipping losses in the Atlantic were so high, a crash program was ordered to produce 200 new cargo ships by July 1941. The design chosen was for an expendable vessel with a design life of 5 years. The ship was basically an 11-knot single-screw steamer of 7,176 gross tons, able to carry 9,146 tons of cargo with full fuel tanks. Its triple expansion steam engine of 2100 bhp at 76 rpm was specified because of its simplicity, standardization of parts, and availability, and because engine room personnel could be sent to sea with a minimum of training. The Liberty ship's fuel would be oil, not coal, and the boilers would now be a water tube type. The choice of a hull design was largely dictated by its suitability for rapid mass production using semi-skilled female welders rather than riveters. The bunker space previously required for 2,400 tons of coal in the Ocean class could now be used for cargo. 1,800 tons of oil fuel and or water ballast were stowed in double bottom tanks. The first of these Liberty ships, Patrick Henry, of the US Bill of Rights fame, was launched on the 27th of September 1941 as the start of a program to launch 2 ships a day. In the event, 2,710 Liberty ships in 5 different versions were built, forming the world's greatest standardized fleet. Post-war, 900 Liberty ships were used to establish many national merchant fleets. Between 1950 and 1961, 17 Liberty ships had their steam reciprocating engines removed and replaced by diesel machinery. Fiat produced a 6-cylinder engine especially for Liberty ships. It was a 3600 BAP 125 RPM engine in which steam required for use by winches, capstan and derricks, etc., came from a boiler heated by engine exhaust gas. Pumps driven by the engine were backed up by steam-driven units. The original propeller shaft was retained, but a different propeller was needed. The conversion cost $180,000, about the market price for a complete ship, but the converted ship could now cruise at 12 knots on a daily fuel consumption of 12 tons of oil. In ballast, she could cruise at 14 knots. The first ship to be converted in 1950 remained in service, carting grain between the Americas and Europe until 1971. So much for them being designed to only last 5 years. By the end of World War II, 3,140 Liberty ships in 5 different versions to be ordered from 18 shipyards. Of the 2,711 completed, 240 were sunk during the war. 13 Liberty ships were each fitted with stalls to carry 700 mules. 30 were also converted to carry 500 troops. 38 Lend-Lease Liberty ships loaned to Russia were never returned or paid for, but operated as part of Russia's post-war merchant fleet. And there we have the history of Liberty ships from World War II. This is VK30TN and associated relay stations for the Radio Amateurs Old Climbers Club of Australia with the December 2022 broadcast of news and information for members and friends of the club. The second historical item in today's broadcast is from that prolific contributor to the RAOTC broadcast, Clive Wallace, VK6CSW. This amazing story is taken from Into the Silk, a book about the Caterpillar Club, consisting of the true stories of those whose lives were saved by the Irvine parachute. Over to Clive.
Leslie Irvine made the first ever free-fall parachute descent in 1919 using a parachute of his own design. In 1922 he founded the Caterpillar Club, an informal association of people who have used an Irvine parachute to bail out of a disabled aircraft to save their life. The bailout must be authenticated by the parachute maker and a third party. Successful applicants receive a membership certificate and a distinctive gold Caterpillar lapel badge engraved with their name. This true story is about one man who would like to have been a club member, but who failed because he fell 18,000 feet without his parachute, yet lived to tell the tale. Flight Sergeant Nicholas Alcamaide jumped out of a Lancaster of No. 115 Squadron 18,000 feet over Germany without a parachute, yet he survived and without a single broken bone. Alcamaide, who had been a market gardener at Loughborough before joining the RAF, was 21 at the time. It happened on his 15th operation on March the 23rd, 1944, when he and his crew were returning to their base at Wychford in Norfolk from a raid on Berlin. Over the Ruhr, shortly before midnight, the Lancaster was caught by a German night fighter. The starboard wing was ripped open like a tin of beans, and the aircraft caught fire. Alcamaide saw flames begin to pour back past his turret, and before long he heard the pilot's voice on the intercom say, "Sorry boys, I can't hold her. Bail out, bail out." As the crew began individually to acknowledge the order with "bailing out," he unplugged his intercom lead, centralized the turret, and opened the swing doors, which led back into the fuselage, to reach for his parachute, which was in a metal container on the other side. He was too late. The fuselage interior was ablaze from end to end. It looked like the barrel of a giant blow lamp, and in the brief seconds during which he saw his parachute pack burning in its stowage, his face and wrists were scorched, and his rubber oxygen mask began to melt on his face. Quickly, he slid back into the turret and closed the doors. The terrible discovery brought a hollow contracting sensation to the bottom of his stomach, yet in those moments it was very much a subsidiary feeling. The merciless, skin-shrivelling heat terrified him far more than the loss of his parachute. And now the turret, too, was burning. He ripped off his melting mask, and as it came away from his face, the oxygen that was streaming into it began to feed the flames. Then the fluid in the turret hydraulic lines caught fire, and the flames spread to his clothes. Far better, he decided, to die cleanly, better than a slow, frying death. With the hand control, he rotated the turret onto the beam. Then he fell out backwards into the night. He had scarcely left the aircraft when, in a fiery flash, it exploded above him. He found himself falling head first, rigidly to attention. It was a clear, dark night, and all he saw during the minute and a half of his 3.5-mile descent were the stars beyond his feet. He had no sensation of falling, and his body made only a slight breeze as it dropped. After the inferno he had escaped from, the cool night air was peacefully soothing, and he found himself thinking, if this is dying, it's not at all strange. No memories of his past life flashed before him. He felt no fear, no panic. There was nothing he could do to save himself, and he knew that he would know nothing of the end when it came. He decided not to turn his head and look down. He didn't want any warning of the end. And that was his last recollection of his descent, inverted in space, the stars below his flying boots, and a sensation, which persisted to the end, that he was stationary. It had been close to midnight when they were attacked. 3 hours later, Alcemade regained consciousness, lying on his back in snow in a small pine wood. When he opened his eyes and looked up, he could see the stars through the hole which he had made in the trees above. Jesus Christ, he murmured to himself, I'm alive. And it was not an expression of blasphemy, but heartfelt thanks. To make quite sure, he wriggled his toes, and with his hands began systematically to feel himself all over. Incredibly, fantastically, apart from severe bruising, numerous small cuts and scratches, and the burns that he had received in the aircraft, he was in one piece. He suffered no loss of memory, remembered clearly his descent without parachute, yet strangely, after his initial discovery of the fact, he felt no great surprise that he was alive. It was not until several hours later that his emotional numbness was to wear off and his senses were to grasp fully the significance of the miracle. For the moment his mind was unable to appreciate the enormity of his experience. He could not regard his deliverance as much more than extraordinarily good luck. Groping in the pockets of his Irvine suit, he found his watch. It was still ticking, and by its luminous hands he saw it was 3:10 a.m. He put the watch back, pulled out a crumpled packet of cigarettes and lit one. For several minutes he lay smoking peacefully. Then, as his eyes grew accustomed to the dark, he stood up and examined himself more thoroughly. Both boots, which he'd been wearing when he left the aircraft, were missing, presumably torn off when he'd crashed at the 120 mile per hour of terminal velocity through the branches of the pine trees. The trouser legs of his flying suit were charred and torn. His harness, it was a chest type on which the parachute pack had to be clipped, was still firmly in position, the lift webs still neatly folded. Not realizing then the part it was to play in corroborating his story, he took the harness off and dropped it in the snow. The snow, he saw, was no more than 18 inches deep. It had drifted in under the trees from open ground which bordered the pine wood. Out in the open there was no snow. If he had fallen just 20 yards to one side of the wood, nothing could have saved him. And so to two simple facts he owed his life. First, to the springy branches of the pines, which were young and supple, and secondly, to the snow which had received him as he dropped out of the branches. When he tried to walk out of the wood, one leg crumpled under him, and he had to sit down again. He remembered that he had twisted it as he flipped himself out of the turret. The reaction was setting in now, and the cold began to creep through his bruised limbs. He knew he would have to give himself up, so he pulled up the whistle hooked on his battle-dress lapel and blew a series of long blasts. Soon he heard voices and the sound of crashing through the trees. A torch shone in his face, and he saw that his captors were German Home Guardsmen. The Germans were more interested in his cigarettes, which they promptly relieved him of, than in Alcemade himself. They brought a tarpaulin, laid him on it, and dragged him like a sack of potatoes to a cottage, where an elderly woman fed him brandy egg nogs. Then some Gestapo men arrived, and he was taken by car to hospital at Maschede, where the doctors removed a large quantity of perspex splinters and twigs from his flesh and treated his burns. Next morning the interrogation began. The Germans wanted to know what had become of his parachute. When Alcemade said he'd come down without one, his interrogators laughed disbelievingly, accused him of being a spy and of hiding his parachute. "If you don't believe me then," said Alcemade indignantly, "go and find my parachute harness." In due course the harness was collected from the pine woods, and when his accusers saw it, they were partly convinced, for the lift webs, which extend when the parachute opens, were, of course, clipped down. A few days later, from being a suspect spy, Alcemade became a minor hero. In the burnt-out wreckage of the Lancaster, which had fallen 20 miles away, with 4 members of the crew who didn't get out, the metal remains of his parachute, the ripcord handle and cable, were still found in the stowage. So impressed were the Germans that when Alcemade was delivered to prison camp, the 200 Allied prisoners there were paraded to hear a Luftwaffe official recite the details of his incredible descent. And so that he would not be doubted again, he was given a certificate. It read, "It has been investigated and corroborated by the German authorities that the claim of Sergeant Alcemade, number 1431537, is true in all respects, namely, that he has made a descent from 18,000 feet without a parachute and made a safe landing without injuries, the parachute having been on fire in the aircraft. He landed in deep snow among fir trees. Corroboration witnessed by Flight Lieutenant H.J. Moore, Senior British Officer, Flight Sergeant R.R. Lamb, and Flight Sergeant T.A. Jones." Dated the 25th of April 1944. Was it luck? Or was it, as Alcemade stoutly believes in his case, divine intervention? His 3.5-mile fall was only the first of a series of narrow escapes from violent death. The next was in 1946 when, soon after demobilization, he was working in a chemical factory at Loughborough. One day he had to enter a sump hole to pump out a quantity of liquid chemical that was generating poisonous chlorine gas. Halfway through the operation he received a severe electric shock from the pump that he was holding, and as he stumbled his gas mask fell off. It was 15 minutes before his cries brought help, and he was hauled out, nearly asphyxiated by the chlorine fumes. A few weeks later, in the same factory, he was siphoning sulfuric acid. A pipe burst, and his face and arms were drenched in the acid. But for a 40-gallon drum of lime wash, which was standing nearby, he might well have been fatally burned. With lightning presence of mind, he dived headfirst into the lime drum. The acid was neutralized, and he escaped with first-degree burns. And, having recovered from that, he went back to work to be knocked flat by a 9-foot-tall steel door channel, which broke off and fell on top of him. The men who prized the channel up and pulled him out were sure that he was dead. Not Alcamaid. He had suffered only slight bruising, but even he felt that he'd tempted Providence often enough. Deciding to seek work in a less dangerous environment, he became a furniture salesman. Flight Sergeant Nicholas Stephen Alcamaid, RAF, died in June 1987.
Thank you, Clive Wallace, VK6CSW. That concludes the RAOTC News and Information Session for December 2022. Many thanks to those who have relayed the broadcast this month. Your invaluable help is much appreciated. May I take the opportunity in this, my last RAOTC News broadcast, to thank those who have listened to me and assisted me with these broadcasts on and off over the past 20 plus years. May I also take the opportunity, on behalf of the RAOTC Committee and myself, to wish all listeners a very Merry Christmas 2022 and a very happy, safe, healthy and prosperous 2023. May good fortune shine on you all. A reminder that the next RAOTC News and Information broadcast should take place on Monday, the 6th of February 2023, on the same frequencies and at the same times as today. As is the usual practice, there will not be an RAOTC News broadcast in January 2023. Don't forget, if you missed all or part of this broadcast, you can download the MP3 audio file from our website at www.raotc.org.au. Callbacks will follow most of the broadcast transmissions so that members and other listeners can give reports and make comments or suggestions. If you have listened to the broadcast, please take a few minutes to participate in either a check-in or a callback. The details of each callback will be announced by the relay station operator. And if you have listened to this broadcast via streaming or a download from the RAOTC's website, please consider sending an email to the RAOTC email address of raotc@raotc.org.au to let us know your comments on the broadcast. This is VK3OTN signing clear from today's News and Information Session 73 from Bill Roper, VK3BR, on behalf of the RAOTC broadcast team.